Kingdom greetings, people of God. I'm Minister Nelson Dennis. I just want to be before you for a few moments talking about a man from the Bible, and his name is Mephibosheth. And he's located in 2 Samuel chapter 9. I believe it's a few things from his life that we can learn that will help us in our walk with faith. Now David said, "Is there still anyone who left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now, David at this point is thinking about someone that he can display kindness. Another translation for that word kindness would be the word grace, God's unmerited favor, or giving us something on his behalf that we don't deserve. So David is sitting back and he's thinking about someone that he can extend that grace to, and he's remembering that he made a covenant with his friend, and his friend's name was Jonathan. For it was also customary during those times that when a new king took over office, that they would eliminate or exterminate the family of the previous king. And they did that to avoid any type of revolt situation from happening. So David is right here is still remembering that covenant. And he's remembering the fact that he made a promise. So David is now a king, and he's keeping his promise. So this was the first promise that David made to his friend named Jonathan. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 13 through 14. "If it please my father to do you harm, may the Lord do so to Jonathan, and more also, if I do not make it known to you and send you away, that you may go in safety, and may the Lord be with you as he has been with my father." That was the first promise that David made to his friend before he became king, to Jonathan. It also says, "And if I'm still alive, will you not show me the loving kindness of the Lord that I may not die?" And that's that word again, loving kindness, which is also translated grace. So would you show me the grace of the Lord that I may not die? The second promise that David made to Jonathan, 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 16 through 17. "So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord require it at the hands of David's enemies. And Jonathan made David vow again because of his love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own life." That's the second promise that David made to his friend before he became king. David also made a promise to the house of Saul. He made it to Saul himself. That promise is found in 1 Samuel chapter 24, and it's verses 20 through 22. "And now, behold, I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. So now swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's household." And David swore to Saul. So these are all promises that David made, covenant promises that he made to Jonathan, that whenever he became king and whenever he got into office, that he wouldn't eliminate or exterminate the house of Saul. So back to the text in 2 Samuel chapter 9, where David is looking for somebody from the house of Saul where he can make good on his word, where he can fulfill that promise. Verse 2, "And there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, Are you Ziba? He said, At your service. Then the king said, Is there still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, There is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet." So here we see a servant from the house of Saul is coming to David, and he's telling the king that yes, there is someone left in the land from the house of Saul, but he's lame in both his feet. So listen to what he's saying. He's saying that this person is disabled. But look at what David is saying. I still want to show him kindness. So the king said to him, Where is he? Ziba said to the king, Indeed, he is in the house of Mashir, the son of Amiel, in Lodabar. Now, that word Lodabar, the word lo means no in Hebrew, and the word dabar means pasture. So that means that that place was called no pasture. So here we have a man that's crippled in both his feet, that's lame, and he's living in a place of no pasture. And that's similar to a lot of us today. The place of no pasture is a place of depression. It's a place of anxiety. It's a place of desolation. That's the place of Lodabar, and that's where this man, where he's crippled in both his feet, he's found living. Verse 6, now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Then David said, Mephibosheth. And that's a beautiful display. I like how the text puts it. It shows that Mephibosheth, and once again I said that Mephibosheth, his name means man of shame, or it also can mean mouth of shame. So he comes before the king, and the first thing he does when he gets into the presence of the king, and this is an indicator of worship, is that he fell on his face and he prostrated himself. So he laid prostrate. And look what the king did. The king said Mephibosheth. That's right, the king called his name. Listen to what it says. It says, and he answered, here is your servant. So David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually. So now the king is telling him that he's making good on his word, because he made a covenant to Jonathan. He made a covenant to Saul that he wouldn't destroy everyone from their household. And now that he's found somebody from that household, he wants to make good on his word. And that's just like the king that we serve. He's a covenant keeping God. He makes good on his word. He's looking for someone to keep the promise to. For we have grandparents and that made promises to God and had covenant with God, and was asking the Lord to bless their children, to bless the generations, and God is still doing that today. So that's the same thing that we find in the text. That's what David is doing with Mephibosheth. And listen to this: the king is restoring all. He's restoring all. And that's what, in a lot of our lives, that's what God is doing also. He's restoring all. He's restoring the things that you lost. He's restoring jobs. He's restoring marriages. He's restoring. The king is looking for someone that he can restore. And the reason why he wants to restore is because of his promise, because of his covenant that he's made. Look what he said. He said that you shall eat bread at my table continually. He's no longer you going to be eating in a place of Lodabar, and no longer you going to be eating in a place of no pasture. He said you're going to eat at my table. You're going to be eating at the king's table. So look at what the text says, verse 8. Then he bowed himself and said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? And the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given to your master's son all that belonged to Saul and to all his house. You therefore and your sons and your servants shall work the land for him, and you shall bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. Look at that. The king is now saying that he's going to give you houses that you didn't buy. He's going to give you land that you didn't buy. He's restoring all. He's doing all this because of a covenant. All this because of a promise that he made, and he's keeping his word. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Verse 11. Then Ziba said to the king, according to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so will your servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Misha, and all who dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table. And listen to how the text ends that. It says, and he was lame in both his feet. So it's showing a man of shame that's being invited to come and to sit and to eat continually at the king's table. Grace is being displayed to him. And the reason why God is displaying that grace, or the reason why the king is displaying that grace, is because of a covenant, because he's a covenant keeping God. He's a promise keeping God, and he's true to his word, and whatever he said, that's what he's going to do. Some of the lessons that we can learn from this beautiful story, things that we can learn from Mephibosheth, would be, number one, Mephibosheth knew what it was like to be a son of the king and fall from grace and be restored. Adam fell from grace, and Jesus, the Son of God, restored us. Number 2, Mephibosheth was 5 years old when his nurse dropped him because she heard that his father and grandfather was killed in battle. This injury caused him to be lame in both his feet. And some of you were wounded in your youth, but God is extending his grace, restoring you and using you for the kingdom of God, for it's things that happened to you in your infancy stage, traumatic things that happened, and you thought that because those things happened to you as a child that your life was over, that the story stops there, but God is still extending his grace and he's still going to use you for kingdom purposes. Here's another thing, number 3, that we can learn from the life of Mephibosheth. The love King David had for Jonathan caused him to extend grace to his disabled son. God, because of his love for the price Jesus paid on the cross, grants grace to us if we believe in Jesus. I hope these few little points from the life of Mephibosheth can help us in our faith journey. Check out the description. If you like this video, share it and subscribe. Be blessed.